Hey everyone, so today I'm actually starting a new little sort of mini series on my channel sharing some things about how I create and film. I recently got a comment on one of my more recent videos on my channel asking me if I could do a tutorial on my channel on how I create my short films and series and just basically how I write and script and all of that kind of stuff. So I've decided to break it up into parts so I can dive into each aspect a little bit more thoroughly, or at least try. So today I'm going to be starting by talking about making characters, and I'll be using some of my existing characters and a few, or at least one, of my barely developed characters to use as examples essentially. Alright, so personally the first things I always develop for my characters is their name and then often their sexuality and pronouns. Knowing and developing these things gives me a good foundation for each pet I find, and it often impacts where they end up going from there and the kinds of story or stories that they end up in. So let's do a little example, shall we? I'm gonna grab a random pet off my desk and we're gonna sort of develop them together. Let me pick one and then this will make more sense. So I'm gonna move my mask out of the way. Let's go with her. Oh my goodness, she doesn't want to stand up for me, but yeah, we'll do our best. I might need to peg swap her, that might be the problem, we'll see. But anyway, I've grabbed this this random spaniel off my desk here, and she's not very developed. Well, you might notice that I do keep referring to her as she, so I have sort of decided that much for myself. I just sort of felt like that's who she is to me, so I guess we can say off the bat that I'm going to choose she, her pronouns for her. And let's see. I think I actually did also name her, so I guess this wasn't as completely random as I thought. I have named her Lydia, but she's still not really super developed in terms of like a character, so we can still figure out all of the other good stuff. So let's see. I feel like she would be bisexual. She's giving bi vibes to me. That's just what I feel like when I look at her and when I think of the character that she could be. I also feel like I want to make her autistic. In some way that I feel like that would be a part of her. She just sort of feels like she could fit that kind of character. And I feel like if we do go with that, that would also be something that she probably struggles a little bit with, so that could also be a part of her personality. Being autistic or, on the spectrum, and that not always being easy for her in various different ways. So that's a couple things already that I can develop for her. So that is always where I start off with characters. I always start off with their name, thinking of a name for them, thinking of their identity, their sexuality, their pronouns, and that kind of stuff, because I find that that's usually a good place to start and some of the first things that you kind of really need to know to really develop their story and such. And I just find it helps me to go further with them in general. And I would say a lot of it is just simply me observing the LPS. I'm just looking at her and thinking about... Sorry, that was my cord. If you heard a noise. What was I saying? Yes, just looking and observing her is honestly a really big part of why I came up with the things that I did. I just felt like she looked bi, she looks like she would just be she, her, but I feel like she might be on the spectrum, that she's a little autistic, or even maybe a lot. I'm not sure yet, but You don't have to have every little thing figured out like immediately, so this is our like base. And I find when I get a new pet like in the mail or from a friend or however I get a new pet, and it's one that I want to film with and give them a character, this is how I start out, and then after that I start thinking about personality traits and such that they would have, which is a part of where I thought of, as I said, like the autistic for her. Now, I assure you, this next thing I'm going to say is not impacted by her outfit, but when I look at her, if we start to think about like personality for her, I just feel like she would be a really sweet character, someone who shows nothing but kindness to other people, but I feel like maybe that would also mean that not everybody is nice to her, sadly. I don't know, or just somebody that doesn't always get kindness in return. But I feel like she wouldn't ever go and stoop to anybody's lower level, that she would have like a sense of knowing that it's not worth it and not wanting to go to other people's levels if anybody is ever like being really mean or something to her. And I feel like she might also be someone that really likes whimsy, I don't know, or like just sort of fun things, like someone that just likes, like, is whimsical. And I feel like other people might perhaps perceive that as a little bit childish in her, but she's just expressing her style and interests. So overall I feel like she would be really sweet, someone who's really honest and genuine with people and doesn't hide anything, but also someone who can sometimes maybe have a hard time connecting with people. Those are just some thoughts for her. I'm so sorry, I just realized that a lot of that I don't think was in focus very well. I don't know how much of it though, so like as of right now, but moving on. The last thing I wanted to sort of say, with her still here is, well, I guess it's not relevant to her, but still. Sometimes I also base characters on, like, I'll pick a pet based on, like, the fact that I just think they're going to fit the character that I want. Like, I could plan out a story and I'll know like personalities and different stuff for characters, but I won't have necessarily picked out an LPS yet, so I'll just go and look and see who fits what I'm looking for. So that's also an option as well, if you ever want to like try that, or if you're in that position, I guess. But anyway, overall, everything that I said, that's just a really big part and is my personal process. Also wanted to share with you just a few of my pre-developed characters who've been on my channel and are prominent people. So let's just briefly talk about them so you can also see like how I've gotten to characters that I have now. Like how they got to be the way that they are, so you can also see my process in my developed characters. Okay, so I'm gonna start with Dean. Dean is one of my more recently developed characters. He was gifted to me by my best friend Cami for my birthday this year. You maybe saw or remember him being in that like haul video that I did. So his name was one that we came up with together. I'm pretty sure she suggested it, and we were both like going through names together, and she suggested Dean, and I just thought it really fit him, and I liked this for him. So that's where his name came from. But for the first week or so of having him, that's honestly all I knew, was that his name was Dean, and he was a he. But then I started thinking about him more, and I decided I really wanted him to be trans, specifically a trans man, for multiple reasons. The first being that he just felt that way to me. It felt like it fit him. The second that I really started thinking about him, I don't know, he just felt like a trans man to me, and I really liked that for him, and that's honestly just sort of the reason behind that. The second reason is that I honestly had yet to have any trans male characters on my channel as far as I'm aware. I have had non-binary characters and I've had at least one trans female character, but I had yet to really showcase a trans male character, so I really wanted to do that for that reason as well. And then the third reason is just I like trying my best to have some diversity in my characters in both their sexualities and identities on my channel, so I also liked that aspect of it, that he would be something that I haven't really brought to the light yet. Well, I have now, but like at the time when I got him, as I said, I hadn't really done a trans character yet, and I just really wanted to do something with him. I wanted him to have his own special story. And I also will admit that his current story isn't the first one that I thought of, actually. I pondered, when I first got him, I pondered sort of making him siblings, honestly, with a short hair that I also got from my best friend at the exact same time. I don't know why, I just originally thought that maybe they would fit together, and I also thought about making him into someone that really likes surfing and the beach, but when I tried to sort of put that story together, it just didn't really flow for me. So don't be discouraged if you have a little bit of trial and error as well when you're making characters, because it doesn't have to be like everything comes together perfectly right away, because it doesn't need to, and it's okay if it takes time for you to develop characters or a story or whatever it is that you're doing. That's totally okay. Another character I'm going to share with you is August. Now, August has honestly changed the most since I first had her, and that's part of why I wanted to use her as my other example. So I got August as a child in an LPS board game called Hideaway Haven, or Heaven. I think sometimes I mispronounce it. It doesn't matter. Anyway. I got her in that along with some other pets. There was 4 in total as a child. And I've had her for many, many years, and she is my first like really developed character that I ever had. But her character, it wasn't always August, is I think what I'm trying to say. It was not her original name even. So originally her name was Cece. She was straight, and she was crushing on my childhood Great Dane Jack, number 577, the one with heterochromia, if you know what I mean. So she wasn't even a lesbian to start with, and neither was Riley. Riley was her best friend in their original, like, story, I guess you could call it. So she was straight, crushing on Jack, best friends with Riley. Riley was going out with Vince, so Riley wasn't a lesbian either. They were like both straight and they were just friends, and it's like to think of how much that's changed is just kind of crazy, but I love it so much more now. It's so much better. No, straight romance is perfectly fine. I like it. It's great, but I love her as her little lesbian self being with Riley. So it wasn't until much later years that her character as August really came through, and then I started thinking about her story and how I really wanted her to have a relationship with Riley and for that to just come together, and it just all sort of began to fall into place. I wanted her to be a bit of like a loner, but not friendless. So she's got Vince, but she's still like mostly in the first like film that she's ever in, like in between the lines, or it might just be called Between the Lines. Regardless, she is sort of more like, it shows that a little bit more, and I did want that for her. Just it felt like it fit her to me. And then I wanted her to have a hard home, sadly. I'm so sorry. my poor little August. but to still be herself and really true to herself despite her mom and stuff not accepting her. And then I wanted her to find Riley and to fall in love with her, and for it to be imperfect and a little bit messy, but to be really beautiful in the end, and for it to give her something that is just really special, and special for both of them. So her character has changed a lot, a lot since I was a child, but so have I, so that might also be part of it. Yeah, so I really wanted her to be my second example because she's just to show like how I developed her, but also that she changed and that's okay, and it makes me really happy. So sometimes when characters change, it can be really cool. Now, if you are really wanting to develop characters or a particular character and you're struggling, I will also share a few tips for things that you can do to spark some flow in the character development department. Because trust me, I struggle too, even though a lot of the time I am lucky and I can come up with things, and sometimes things just come to me and it all just falls into place. That's not always the case. So I wanted to give you some tips for that as well. So if you're struggling coming up with a name for a character or characters, when I get this way, I really love turning to Pinterest or even just online. I love looking at lists, and I even have I have a board on my Pinterest for writing, and one of the sections on that is just for names, like lists and names and lists of names, and yeah. And I like to go through that sometimes when I'm stuck and see if anything jumps out at me, or even sometimes I can think, like sometimes multiple things spark my interest and then I narrow it down from there. So I think that's a really great option if you're stuck with, if you can't think of anything personally to name your character and you would just like to look at some ideas to help spark inspiration, or like if you see one on the list and you really like it, you can go with that. And I just find that really helpful. And when you're searching, you can search for boys' names, girl names, gender-neutral names, androgynous names, anything like that. Or you can also search by short names, long names, names that start with an A. If you know the letter you want, you can also search by letter, or by themes such as fantasy names, astronomy names, floral names, etc. Anything like that. If you've got like any sort of idea in mind, or if you just want to see what comes up for stuff like that, feel free to play around with that and just see what you like. However you want to search, there is lists for literally everything. There's always a list for something out there. And so secondly, kind of going along with this, if you're feeling stuck on traits, sorry, that's the word I'm thinking of, traits for your characters, and you can't really think of any, or you're not thinking of anything that really stands out to you that you want to use for your character, you can also see what you can find with some searching for that. You can look up, again, on Pinterest, you can look up character traits, or you can look up online character traits, or if you want to look up traits for specific kinds of characters, like traits for the villain, traits for the hero, traits for smart, really intelligent characters. I don't even know. This is random, completely random examples, but just you can do that as well to get like your ideas flowing and to help you think of what you would like to add into the personality of the character you're developing. And additionally, the same kind of stuff, you can do this if you're having trouble. Goodness gracious. Okay. If you're thinking, trying to think of what kind of pronouns and sexuality you would like for your character, feel free to look up like different pride flags, look up different sexualities if you can't think of one that you would like to use, or if you just can't really think of any in general, that's okay. It's okay. Not everybody is like super knowledgeable, and that's okay if you're just like a less knowledgeable ally. I hope that doesn't come across badly. I promise I mean it nicely. But anyway, feel free to look up stuff like that, or even like just look up different pronouns, especially if you're trying to think of something, like if you want something out of the box, I guess, for lack of better words, something that you want something that you can't think of, or just, feel free to search stuff like that as well on both Pinterest and the internet. Another thing you can think about when developing characters, or something that can help you develop a character, is thinking about the kind of struggle that you want them to have. This often comes in the form of person versus person, which is a struggle between two or more characters, where one character is, for example, impacted and upset with another character. More specifically, an example could be that you've got your character and they're being bullied by somebody, so that would be a person versus person struggle because they're being impacted by another person. So essentially it's a more outward struggle between two or more people, whereas the other more common struggle is person versus self, where the character is struggling with more internally, or with more internal struggles, such as low self-image or self-esteem, self-worth, mental health issues, identity crisis, trying to figure out who they are, their sexuality, stuff like that, etc. Things that are typically just between the character and themselves. A personal struggle. And then there is also person versus universe, which I'll admit I'm not as familiar as, but the way I interpret this one is it's more of a broad struggle, such as struggling against the world, perhaps against something that has happened in the world, for example my series The Watchmaker, where they get thrown back in time, and just more broad things like that, where you kind of have the character with struggling against the world. I'm not 100% sure how to explain it better than that, so I'm hoping that makes sense. I also find that this can help when you're thinking about, and when you're developing your characters, that you can think about the kind of struggle that they're going to have, because it can impact other things that you're trying to bring together for your character. Alrighty, I think that's about all I have to share with you for right now for this tip about making and developing characters. If there's anything I talked about that you have any questions about, feel free to leave them down below, or if there's anything that you're confused about, feel free to also let me know down below and I can try to better explain. And I hope you found this first part useful. I look forward to bringing you the other parts of this, and just having some tips for you guys on here about this kind of stuff. So I will see you again soon with more content. Bye!